this is interesting, the concept of Trump as a sociopath. And it's particularly interesting because I think that it's entirely reasonable to suggest that Trump's sociopathy or narcissism, or just, who he is, born rich, grew up in a bubble, always got everything handed to him. The toughest time of his life was when he had to have sex with all those women during the Vietnam War. That was his sacrifice. Without getting venereal disease. Wow, tough stuff. That was, he honest to God, he referred to that as his personal Vietnam. Back in the late 60s, early 70s, that he had sex with all those women and had to be very careful not to get venereal disease. And that was his Vietnam. But it makes a lot of sense if you're operating on the assumption that the media made Donald Trump the presidential candidate, that it wouldn't have happened without the complicity of shows like Morning Joe on MSNBC that had Trump on constantly, just constantly, and now is apparently regretting it. The Fox News that Trump was on, and the door was always open. Roger Ailes just, anytime, Donald, come on in. Bring some babes with you, would you? Oh, no, I don't know that he ever said that. But it makes perfect sense because the news organizations now are no longer committed to delivering news to us, because Ronald Reagan blew up the Fairness Doctrine, which said that the first job of a broadcaster, radio or television, or for that matter, cable, was to broadcast in the public interest. And broadcasting the public interest back in the day meant actual news. So NBC, CBS, ABC, they all lost money in their news divisions. And because the news division was the cost of their affiliates, whether they owned them in the case of some of the TV stations, or whether they simply, basically sold or licensed their feed, their audio or video to the radio or television stations, that was the price of keeping the license for those on-the-ground stations. And so there was a constraining force on corporate behavior, the Fairness Doctrine. Reagan blew that up, and then he also blew up the Sherman Act, which got double blown up. Now, there were still some remnants of ownership regulations with regard to media from the old Telecommunications Acts going back to the 1920s, several of them actually, the 20s and the 40s. There were still some remnants left in the 80s, and so in 1996, those got destroyed with the Telecommunications Act of 1996. Again, passed with, a lot of Republican support. And that as a consequence, the news corporations went from being the people who delivered news to us to being the people who tried to make money off us with something that they called news. But it ceased to be news. It became infotainment. And so if you look at the corporate form, when it's no longer restrained by a conscience, and the conscience in this case was the Fairness Doctrine. The Fairness Doctrine, said you have to program in the public interest. You must present real news. And if a station offers an editorial opinion, there must be a countervailing opinion offered as well. Now, if the station itself didn't offer that opinion, then they didn't have to have both sides of the story. So, Fox News was possible during the time of the Fairness Doctrine, as long as they weren't editorializing explicitly, I suppose. Limbaugh was possible, but a little more difficult. At least the news would have to be solid. Or this program, for that matter. I think all of these could have existed under the Fairness Doctrine. But the radio stations and television stations, at least in their news, would have to carry real news. So yesterday, I talked about this yesterday on the air, Joe Scarborough having basically regrets and second thoughts. And Shane, if you can pull this audio off my computer. This is just a little piece of a clip of Joe Scarborough yesterday talking about his personal conspiracy theory that Bill Clinton, this is how weird the Republicans are, that Bill Clinton sent Donald Trump as a Manchurian candidate into the heart of the Republican Party to destroy it. Seriously, here he is.
They are damaging the party, and they're doing it for a guy, as we've said here time and time again, Was a Democrat for 65 years of his life. He voted for Bill Clinton in 92. He voted for Bill Clinton in 96. He voted for Al Gore in 2000. He voted for John Kerry in 2004. And he voted for Barack Obama in 2008. In 2009, he said Hillary Clinton was a great leader, would be a great negotiator. He gave money to Hillary Clinton 3 times. He is a Democrat, and these Republicans are sitting here. I mean, listen, there was a conspiracy theory at the beginning of the campaign that Bill Clinton, this is true, Bill Clinton and Donald Trump spoke on the phone for a very long time before the campaign began. And Bill Clinton encouraged him to run for president, John Heilman.
This is now the Republicans. Oh, my God. You know, if we can't blame ourselves, if we can't blame our voters, let's blame Bill Clinton. It's incredible. But the corporate form is intrinsically sociopathic. It only looks at profit. So why should it be a surprise to anybody? And I don't think that Joe Scarborough is a sociopath, frankly, but or a narcissist. I think he's just a Republican. But why would anybody be surprised if the sociopathic corporate form, MSNBC constantly having Donald Trump on television, and still to this day, I see hours of Trump coverage every single day, minutes of Hillary Clinton coverage, minutes on a good day. They're still doing it. It's corporate sociopaths supporting a Donald Trump sociopath, or corporate sociopaths, because the corporate form, as I said, is intrinsically sociopathic. It has no conscience. It focuses exclusively on profits. And the Supreme Court made it a person that, we should be shocked that the sociopathic media made a sociopath the candidate for president. I think what this should do is cause all Americans to say, wait a minute, we went too far.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Blowing up the Fairness Doctrine, ending the Sherman Antitrust Act, the Telecommunications Act of 1996. We went too far.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.